Hello YouTube. Now, as a writer, living with Asperger's syndrome is equally the best and worst part of who I am. On the positive side, it leads to a heightened imagination, which allows me to draw far more inspiration from the world around me than the majority of people would do. It allows me to see things in a way that most people don't. I see everything. There are patterns everywhere that I can read into, even when they don't exist. The human mind automatically lends itself towards finding patterns. This is why, for things like the face on Mars, we see shapes where they aren't really there. The human mind looks for order. It looks for regularity. A common trait of Asperger's syndrome is to take that to the extremes, which is why Aspergoids tend to gravitate so much towards things like mathematics and engineering, because it's very finely what's the word I'm looking for? It's very clearly defined. It's very rigid. It's very regular. There are a lot of patterns to it. So for that reason, I'm allowed to. It helps me to see a chain of events where other people may not necessarily link them together, which is great, because when it comes to writing, I need to be able to think how this relates to this without necessarily having to do the bit in between. As long as I can see it, I can craft a compelling narrative. At least that's the theory. Anyway, on the not so positive side of that is the tendency for things from my past to come unbidden back into my head, to my mind, and for me to fully experience everything I felt at the time, plus all of the months, weeks, years, decades even of ill feeling I've had from them. It all comes back at once, and it's all bump, it's all there, very strong, which can lead to terrible fits of rage. Anybody else out there who's Aspergic will know exactly what I'm talking about. And I've noticed the majority of, in fact, all of the research I've found thus far about the Aspergic rage cycle, as it's known, is about how to deal with it in children. And it's advice for an adult on how to manage a child. There's nothing there about dealing with it as an adult, because everybody tends to assume that by the time you reach your adult years, you've had a lot more time to practice, you're able to deal with it. And yes, generally speaking, you probably are going to be, but that doesn't make it easy. Makes it easier. There's a difference. So I'd like to share you with two little, pretty much the same thing, but two little things I've found that help me personally. Whether they'll work for you or not, I don't know. The first one is the Fibonacci series. It's a series of numbers that starts with 1 and 1, where each number in the sequence is equal to the sum of the two numbers before it. So it starts with 1 and 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, so on and so forth. The first few should come quite easily to you. By the time you get up to like the 6th or 7th, you're starting to add the numbers together. It's a mnemonic device. It gives your mind something else to latch onto, something to focus on. It can be frustrating, but it's also then the Aspergic stubbornness kicks in, the attention to detail and the fixation on making sure that it's correct. It gives you something else to latch onto, something to focus on. That shuts everything else out around the world. The other one, again, is numbers, prime numbers. Trying to work out which numbers are prime. Pick a number at random and then try and figure out if it's a prime number or not. A prime number is a number that can be divided only by itself and 1. So obviously 1 is a prime number. 2 is a prime number because it can only be divided by 1 and 2. 3 is a prime number because it can only be divided by 3 and 1. 4 isn't, because that can be divided by 2. 5 is. 6 isn't. 7 is. 8 isn't. 9 isn't, because it can be divided by 3. 10 can be divided by 5 and 2. And then 11 and so on and so forth. So pick a number, for example, pick the number 18. Can that be divided by any numbers other than 1 and 2? Yes, off the top of my head I can tell you it's divided by 6 and by 4. Pretty much after 2, if it's an even number, it's going to be divided by 2. So pick odd numbers. But yeah, they work for me, particularly the Fibonacci series. That one tends to be the one as my go-to. The whole, people say, take a deep breath and count to 10. Doesn't work the same way, because you can learn to count to 10 by rows. 1, 2, 3. That can become frustrating in itself, because what happens when you reach 10 and you're still annoyed, you still have that rage bubbling up inside, then you become even more annoyed and you try to do it again, and then you become frustrated and you start to bite through it. So that's what works for me. Hopefully this will reach somebody else out there who hasn't previously considered it, and it will help you too. I really hope so, because it's an awful feeling, and anything that can help you deal with it, even a little bit, can be like taking the weight of the world off your shoulders. So until next time, thank you for watching.